Pledge of Allegiance.
Are you expecting Bart?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Chairman Hewitt,
Here.
Vice Chairman Glass, Commissioner Say, Commissioner Kennedy,
Here.
Commissioner Smith,
Here.
Commissioner Putnam,
Here.
Commissioner Furtick.
Thank you. Everybody has a copy of the minutes. Any comments or motion
I'll
on
make
the
a motion
consent
to-
calendar?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and second. Any discussion? Seeing none, could you please count the vote?
Chairman Hewitt,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Glass, Commissioner Say,
Yes.
Commissioner Kennedy,
Yes.
Commissioner Smith,
Yes.
Commissioner Putnam,
Yes.
Commissioner Furtick.
Abstain.
Okay, the first item of business, under general business, it's a public meeting, not a public hearing, but staff report, please.
All right, so item number 1, under general business, we have a request for approval of a site plan for the remodel of a lower portion of an existing 2-story duplex, which is categorically exempt from environmental review under section 15301 of state CEQA guidelines. The project is in the coastal zone, but is exempt from a coastal development permit as an improvement to a multifamily residence. The Planning Commission will determine whether the project is within the 300-foot appealable seaward area boundary, although it's staff's recommendation that it is outside of that boundary. The associated entitlements, which is just a site plan, require Planning Commission review, but no public hearing. The owner and applicants were here not too long ago for the encroachment permit application for the improvements to the Burma Trail. They're also in the audience. This project is located on their property 215 Beacon in the high-density residential zone. The remodel includes excavation underneath the existing structural footprint of the second story.
Excuse me, I have to abstain. Is this Ola?
Yeah.
Yeah, I need to abstain for financial.
Okay.
Okay, sorry.
Commissioner Say, could you state the reason for the abstention on the record?
Financial conflict.
I'm sorry?
A financial conflict.
Okay, can you specify just
Yes.
for purposes of the administrative record?
My husband drew the project.
Okay, understood. Yeah, so if you want to just recuse for the item and then someone can stop and grab you afterwards.
And if I could, while we have a break, just wanted to indicate for the record that Vice Chairman Glass has arrived.
Thank you.
All right, so the remodel includes excavation within the existing footprint of the second story in order to incorporate that as living space in the lower story, which is the second unit. That excavation is going to include an additional 364 square feet and ensure compliance with 2019 building and fire codes, including proper means of egress and fire sprinklers. Staff found it in compliance with the annual growth policy, with the development standards and the site plan findings. As I mentioned earlier, it is exempt from CEQA and a coastal development permit, and we've received authorization from Edison as well. So our recommendations are to find the project categorically exempt under CEQA, find the application allowed under the 2022 growth policy, find the project exempt from a coastal development permit, and make the determination that the project is not within the 300-foot appealable zone, and approve the site plan as proposed with the standard list of conditions.
Thank you. Any questions for staff before we open the public meeting for comments? Seeing none? Open the public meeting. Anybody want to talk about this project or present any information? Seems pretty simple, but okay. I'll close it. Any discussion
or motion?
Motion to approve, subject to the staff recommendations and finding that the project's categorically exempt under CEQA. The application is allowed under the growth policy of 2022. Project exempt from the coastal development permit, and we've determined that it is not within a 300-foot appealable zone, and approve the site plan as proposed with the standard list of conditions.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
So moved and second, any discussion? Seeing none, if you could, I'll call for a vote.
Chairman Hewitt,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Glass,
Yes.
Commissioner Say, Commissioner Kennedy,
Yes.
Commissioner Smith,
Yes.
Commissioner Putnam,
Yes.
and Commissioner Fertig.
Yes.
Motion carried. I'll go get Yoli. I'll be right back.
Next one is 201.
All right, so Commissioner Say is back for public hearing item number 1. The second item on our agenda is located at 201 East Whitley.
Gotta stop
Do
you
any
there.
other commissioners have to recuse?
I'm recusing myself for property too close.
I thought I might be too close, but I'm not. I'm at least 700 feet away, so I'll be here.
All right, so Commissioner Putnam recused due to proximity, and we're going to go ahead with the staff report, if you're ready.
Please.
So this application is a request for approval of a modification of a variance, an additional variance, and a site plan for the remodel of an existing single-family dwelling, categorically exempt from environmental review under section 15301 of CEQA. Similarly to the last project, the applicant was here not too long ago for an encroachment permit and a variance within the front yard setback to remodel the frontage of this property, which is underway in the high-density residential zone. The additional variance that's being presented today is to exceed the maximum allowed floor area ratio in order to expand upwards. They're going to be adding a second story and a rooftop deck. In order to do so, they would also have to modify the previously approved setback variance within the front 3-foot setback in order to extend that. And just to clarify, what is now going to protrude into the front setback on the second story is completely enclosed, as opposed to a deck, which was authorized for the original variance. There are no changes to the frontage encroachment, but they are modifying the existing first-story floor plan to consolidate 2 of the bedrooms into 1. The rest of the project takes place, includes the construction of a second story and a rooftop deck. The only addition proposed in this application is vertical, and it's within the existing building footprint. The second floor would add 485 square feet of livable space, 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, 1 office space, and a covered deck. Oh, just to clarify, this has been revised since the staff report was written. The covered deck is now enclosed living space. What's going to be occupying the 3-foot yard, the 3-foot front yard. So instead of a covered deck, all of that is enclosed. And then exterior stairs and a rooftop deck that measures 389 square feet. These improvements, combined with the reconfiguration approved as part of Phase 1, do not require a freshwater allocation, and we've received confirmation from Edison. The project is in the coastal zone, but is exempt from a coastal development permit as an improvement to an existing single-family dwelling. The Planning Commission will determine whether the project is within the 300-foot appealable seaward area boundary, and it is exempt under CEQA Guidelines Section 15301. The subject property measures approximately 20 feet by 43 feet, totaling 910 square feet, and it's located on the southeast corner of Whitley and East Whitley Avenue. It was originally constructed in 1919 and is currently undergoing construction improvements authorized by Planning Commission number 2785. For this application, the owner is requesting the expansion of the setback variance granted on March 16, 2022 to apply to the second story, as well as approval of the floor area ratio variance and site plan. Staff has determined that this is in compliance with the annual growth policy and has made the following findings for the site plan approval. Staff has determined that the project complies with all of the development standards for the high-density residential zone, with the exception of the non-conforming setbacks and the exceedance of floor area ratio. These exceptions are the nexus for the associated variance application. I'm going to deviate a little bit from the staff report now. We have had a lot of comments about the overall height for this project. And based on the conceptual plans and the scale that I received as part of the application materials, it came in right underneath the maximum allowed height. I know there's going to be some discussion later on about that. But I just wanted to clarify that point first before moving forward. Staff has also determined that the proposed project is consistent with surrounding properties as they're developed with single and multifamily residences. Phase 1 of the project included the addition of on-site parking. And that the proposed remodel will have minimal effect on the existing architectural style. As I mentioned, we're going to be modifying the previously issued variance application for the proposed additions to the structure within the 3-foot front yard setback, even though they are completely within the existing structural footprint, to comply with the municipal code. The second variance is required to exceed the lot's maximum permitted floor area ratio, which in the zone is limited to 130%. And our findings are as follows. For the front yard variance, the owner would not be able to expand vertically upon frontage improvements granted by the variance for phase 1, although they line up exactly. And similar neighboring properties also encroach on this front yard. For the side setback, they're not increasing the nonconformity, and this lines up also with neighboring properties. For the floor area ratio variance, It's directly proportional to the overall size of the lot, which is below average. The maximum floor area ratio is 130%, or for a lot of this size would be 1,183 square feet. The approval of this variance would allow a 134% floor area ratio for a structure totaling 1,227 square feet. And staff based its findings on the substandard size of the lot, substandard width, and the limitation in buildable area. Just to reiterate, the project is exempt from CEQA as an existing facility and a coastal development permit, and the issuance of a freshwater allocation by Edison. We had not received any public comment at the time of finalizing this report, but as I mentioned earlier, we have received various public comments since then, and we've included that as part of your packet. Based on the findings, staff recommends that the Planning Commission find the project categorically exempt under CEQA Section 15301. Find the application exempt from a coastal development permit and make the determination that the project is not within the 300-foot appealable zone. Approve the site plan as proposed with all applicable entitlements incorporated, subject to the standard list of conditions. Adopt the findings to support the issuance of an amendment to the setback variance and a new floor area ratio variance, and find the application allowed under the 2022 growth policy.
Thank you. Are there any questions for staff to clarify this application before we open the public hearing?
I have a question. The floor area ratio, does that change because of the covered deck now being livable space? Does that matter if it's covered, if it's a deck or livable space?
Any covered area would be included in the floor area ratio calculation, and since the deck was originally covered, it was already included.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for asking.
I have a couple questions. So if you can clarify the height, because that was a question that a few people reached out to me about. I always was under the impression that we measure the height from the highest point of the lot. Correct? Am I correct or am I wrong?
I believe the municipal code says no portion of the building can exceed 28 feet from the lot's natural surface. We did take the measurement from the lowest point.
You did, okay. Because on here it shows, I think 30, maybe my calculations are wrong.
I used the scale on the, it was 3/16 of an inch.
Okay,
equals
so
1
it was
foot
from
on
the
plan.
lowest point,
Yes.
okay. And then,
But also, any kind of approval of the site plan would not supersede conformance to the development standards. So the detailed set of plans that would be turned in following approval, if you choose to go that direction, those detailed plans would have to come out to 28 feet, or a building permit would not be issued without a variance.
okay, thank you for that. And another question on the front of the building. I went to the project today, and then I also drove around the town, and a majority of every second story new construction all has at least a 10-foot setback in the front. It's not like straight up and down like this is here. Almost like, I didn't think we were allowed to do macing in the front of the building. If it's new construction, it has to be set back. So like if you're going to a duplex on the flats, you have the front, the bottom unit, and then every top unit, the second floor, is set back at least 10 for like a balcony, or even if there's no, so the second building starts 10 feet back.
So there actually is a section in the municipal code underneath the area designated in the HD zone, which is commonly referred to as the flats. So it doesn't apply to the entire high-density residential zone. It only applies to the flats.
Okay.
And it does exclude decks and balconies too, I believe. So there aren't any massing requirements for this particular area, but as part of your site plan review, you guys are more than welcome to, increase the minimum required yards for this second-story expansion. But there's no default requirement.
Okay.
Anybody else? Seems clear. So open the public hearing. Anybody would like to come forward and speak for, against, or just provide comments on this project, please do. When you do, start with your name and address, and then
Good evening. Can you hear me? I am Tim Canby. I am an owner of the house at 212 Whitley Avenue. My daughter is Monica Canby, and she is the owner of the property at 208 Whitley. I am working as a civil engineer and have done many projects in Avalon. My work has given me knowledge to design and develop plans for buildings. We are here tonight to discuss the proposed second floor and deck addition of the proposed remodel at 201 East Whitley. The design is shown on plans submitted by the owner. The Planning Commission is tasked with deciding if the project may proceed or not with permitting according to these plans that have been submitted. I first wanted to learn about this project, and so before I had any plans, I went over and took measurements, and I prepared a floor plan. It was basically the first level floor plan, and then I measured elevations and where the lot was in a reference to the property line. And it's relatively easy to do because the front elevation is directly on the property line, and it's easy to measure from the center line of the street to the property. And so once I did that, I wanted to see what the allowable building envelope is. And I prepared 3 drawings. I think you have those. And one thing is the maximum building height allowed is 28 feet, and as we're discussing it, possibly this 28 feet is at the point above where any structure would be. So at the front, the way the plans are showing right now, the height would be 31 3/4 feet above the natural grade at the front. And as you go up, it gets steeper. There is not a proper plan presented which actually shows where the buildable envelope is. And so part of the roof, like at the front part, he would not be able to have adequate clearance for his handrails, be less than 42 inches. So we definitely can't build a deck there. So the deck area should be examined a little bit more carefully than is shown on those plans. And I don't think that it can fit in as he has shown on there. So I expect that a height variance would be required for at least a portion of that deck. And as far as the required setback, The left and right walls are as close as 8 inches. And I submitted one picture here, which shows the property. It shows a kind of a plan view of the property. And the plan that had been submitted is to go straight up vertically on all those walls. So if this is done, I mean, at the front, it's gonna be a vertical wall that goes up. So gonna go up about, let's see, it's gonna go up almost 30 feet. And I don't think we have anything like that in Avalon that goes up like that. And I went and I took the buildable envelope and I just checked to see how many square foot he could actually build within that. And I came up with 446 square feet. So my contention is that no variances should be granted for this project because he's on such a small lot. And when you grant a variance, the setbacks are to provide open air, to allow light to penetrate, allow sunshine, allow air to flow, allow visibilities of surroundings, provide architectural variation, and help to mitigate the spread of fire, and provide separation for noise and sounds. The code recognizes the importance of setbacks. As neighbors, we want to preserve these open areas as much as possible and not lose them. So if you grant the setbacks, or the variances, we're gonna lose all those things. Our property values are gonna go down because we've lost view and all kinds of things. And anyone who wants to come up here shouldn't be able to just get a variance. There should be no variances given to builders that take space because their lot size is too small. The property owners property owners of the surrounding houses are entitled to the space of the setbacks the codes specify as being required for their neighbors, that their neighbors might take away from them. For these reasons, please do not approve the addition as depicted on these plans. The design should be compliant with city codes. The neighbors and neighborhood will appreciate a more willingly and accept such a design that could be submitted without variances being required. It's unfortunate it's such a small lot, but it was built for just one, apparently for one floor, and it's been that way for over 100 years. So it's difficult for anyone around here, the neighbors, to see this happen and have a view taken away and have the setbacks disregarded, the required setbacks disregarded. And my feeling is that it should actually really have the 10-foot, anything should have the 10-foot setback on the front porch. And the roof, I believe, is not workable. And if he had the 10-foot setback on the front, he could use that for his picnic area and that sort of thing. And it'd be a lot more acceptable to the neighborhood. So that's, I guess that concludes what I wanted to say.
Tim, I have a
Thank you.
question for
Yes.
you.
Commissioner, we can't engage in questions during public comment, so it would be something that could be requested as a follow-up, but we can't engage in substantive back and forth as in response to public comment.
Okay, thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome. Okay.
Hello,
Hi. Name and address, please.
Sutton Trout, and I'm at 203 East Whitley. So the house right next door to 201. My great-grandfather built the house in 1904. And I think Tim's done a really good job of expressing my concerns as well. I think it boils down to, so I understand why they want to do this. I would want to do the same thing if I had a small lot and I wanted to make the most of it, which is fine, but I think it can be done within code as opposed to asking and requiring a bunch of variances that will adversely affect not just myself, but neighbors around me as well. You know, Tim did a good job of describing the light and the air, the space, and the views and the things that, you know, our houses have been there 100+ years that we're entitled to. So I think I'd be very supportive of something that was within code, but I'm not supportive of something that asks for a lot of different variances because they got a lot that's too small or because, you know, they think it's cool. I get it, but it doesn't equal in my mind a reason to approve it. I think that's really all I wanted to say. And I know we don't have a back and forth, so I'll pass it along.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Monica Canby, and I'm the owner of 208 Whitley, and I am opposed to allowing the variance of 201 East Whitley. It's going to cut off a major part of my harbor view, and this in turn will drastically reduce the value of my property. So that's all I want to say.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Carolyn Fred Kilbride of 206 West Whitley, which is our yearly home and has been in our family since the 30s. We are opposed to granting these variances for this project to proceed as shown in the plans, because our concerns, in addition to those previously voiced by our neighbors, are the obstruction of our view, both from our living room and our bedroom, the impediment of our airflow and airspace, the decrease in value of our family home from loss of view, an increase in noise, especially if there's a roof deck, and a decrease in privacy, because it'll be right up to our bedroom and living room windows. So we're just hoping you'll think about this again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any photographs that you have?
Anyone else?
Yes.
Hello, Mark Pasver. I'm the owner of 201 Whitley. So I've heard the concerns from the neighbors. And first and foremost, I want to be a good neighbor. And I can assure my neighbors that we want to work with everybody, but at the same time, we are also looking for a reasonable amount of, a certain amount of flexibility. The issue I think that we've heard most about is the height, as well as the floor area ratio variance. The question of height, the municipal code says that the building height is to be measured from its natural surface. Now, what is that height on a sloped lot? I've heard somebody says it's the high point. Is it the high point of the lot, and from there you measure 28 feet? Or is it the low point of the lot, and from there you measure 28 feet? Or do you take an average, and from there you measure your 28 feet? Now, depending on which approach you take, I agree with Tim that our current design would show the front being close to 30 feet from the lowest point. However, it would only show the back to be 26 feet from the lowest point. So the average would be 28 feet. Now, be all of that as it may, I understand the concerns. I would not want to be in their shoes, and I'm willing and prepared. And I don't know, were you able to slip in that one page?
No, I didn't. I have them. You can hand them out if you want to.
We also have it available on the screen as well.
How do we pull it up?
Do you want me to pull it up right now?
Yes, please. I am prepared to make adjustments to this design so that no floor area ratio is required, definitely no height variance is required, but I do want to clarify one particular comment on how we are looking at building height. There's a lot of things we can do. We can go with a low-pitched roof, you know, to really keep the building height low. We can shave off several inches of our story height. We have that flexibility. We can do all that. And so we've come up with this alternate design that I believe gives us a 14-foot setback from the front. It eliminates the rooftop deck. Well, let's see, it'll come up in a minute, I think.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
Yeah. So this is a scaled back version.
Guess it's appropriate to hand some of these to the.
Absolutely.
Your opposition?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, I got it. So I put an isometric on the bottom. If you look at the 3D view on the right bottom corner, the right-hand side would represent Whitley Avenue. The left-hand side, or the front side of the house, would represent East Whitley going up. As you can see, we are not making any changes to the current approved variances as they exist for level 1. We are now adding this second story, but at a reduced story height and with a low-pitched roof. And the front portion of the house is a deck. The front portion of the livable space is pushed back 14 feet, and it adds a 225 square foot deck. This will put the overall project square foot area within the allowable floor area ratio, well within. The issue is interpretation of height. As you can see on this particular elevation, the front portion of the house, measured to its natural surface, is well within 28 feet. Where the roof starts, we are measuring 28 feet to its natural surface. And from there, continuing a straight line back. I would not think that it would be fair for the roof that starts at this location to be bound to a natural surface that is here. But I think it would be fair to say that the natural surface for where that roof starts is here. And that's where the 28-foot starts, and that's where it goes straight back. So overall, this reduces the overall project height by 2 feet. It eliminates the rooftop. It is it significantly reduces square foot area and brings it within FAR ratio. It addresses the setback at the front, whereby the first 14 feet here is a deck area, and then the house starts. So that is what I am prepared to commit to, as a gesture to my neighbors, and I think that all of this is, in our opinion, within the municipal code, and should be more palatable and more in line and flows with the slope of the street. And I hope that this alternative plan can meet your approval.
Thank you.
Thank you. I do have a question.
No question. Anyone else wish to speak for or against, or? No, I think we're going to stick with the formal format of the public hearing. I think we know what your concerns are. I think everybody was actually very clear. I don't want to bring it up twice. And Anybody else, anybody new wish to speak? Seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing and open it up either with a motion or some light general discussion, and then if it gets too heavy, we'll stop it and then require a motion and a second to carry it out. Does that seem?
I have a question for staff.
Yeah, let's start with staff, some technical questions, and I have one too, actually.
And so, about the height variance. I mean, we're not doing a height variance, about the height. So, on the highest point, so when you're building on a hill or a slope, how do you build a 2-story, 3-story, 4-story, unless you measure the height from the highest point? You would not be able to get all those. I mean, that's how I've always interpreted the municipal code.
So we do have a height envelope diagram that I probably should have prepared for this meeting. But for non-hillside lots that are under 14 degrees sloping, the height envelope runs parallel to the grade of the lot from the front to the back,
Okay.
highest point, lowest
Okay.
point included.
And to
So it can't exceed 28
that would
feet.
be natural grade.
Yes.
Okay,
So it can't
so
exceed
there's-
28 feet at the highest point, the lowest point, the middle, anywhere.
Okay, so to go above 28 feet from the front of the lot would require a height variance,
Correct.
and that's not part of this application,
No.
is it?
Using the 3/16 of an inch scale to a foot on the submittal application, I got just at 28 feet, which is why I didn't include the variance in this application. But I do recognize that 3/16 of an inch is,
Right,
there's a margin for error. And like I said earlier, approval of this site plan with the conceptual plans would not supersede any kind of conformance with the development standards. And any detailed plans turned in for the building permit would have to comply exactly with the 28 feet, and that would be actively monitored by the building official during construction and inspections.
Okay, any other technical questions?
20, okay.
You know what, I'm thinking, let's start with the motion in a second before the discussion. That way we're talking about something that it actually has a chance of going through.
Okay.
So do I?
Chair, would you mind, could I ask a follow-up question as well?
Please.
Just for the department, for purposes of the record. So it sounds like the owner provided some revised plans, so I wanted to just confirm with planning department if they feel that those plans provided available as part of this public meeting do mitigate the need for a FAR setback as part of a possible condition of approval if the commission was to approve those plans.
I can't guarantee the floor area ratio variance being rendered null, but just looking at it, I would say it's more than likely that they would meet floor area ratio requirements. Again, I can't 100% clarity say that the height complies with the development standards, but it would have to upon any kind of formal submittal, detailed plan submittal for a building permit, unless they came back here and requested a variance. But based on those conceptual drawings, it looked like the only associated entitlement needed for the revised plan would be the front setback and a site plan approval.
And for those in the audience, that voice from above is Isaac, and he's our legal counsel. So just to clarify it. Okay.
Not the Wizard of Oz.
Yeah. Would someone like to make a motion?
Well, so
A detailed motion?
Question for-
Oh, technical question? Yes. please.
Yes, I realize everything that we're getting in this revised plan is downsized, eliminating the need for the variances. Is it substantially different enough from what was applied for the meeting that it needs any other scrutiny, or because it's downsizing, are we good with it?
I think it depends on what the motion is. If the motion were to be to decline both variances, this might be the response to it. So I think it depends what the motion is.
Okay.
If I may.
Can I speak on this really quick?
Please.
So I think you guys can go a couple different directions, like you were saying. You could deny the variances and request that the applicant come back with a revised application. I think you could approve this site plan and determine which site plan you're referring to, this conceptual, or, you know, if you're denying the variances or going for the first one. You know, with the caveat that it complies with all development standards, which is standard. Or if you wanted to have more scrutiny, you can continue the item or request a full submittal for the revised plan.
Thank you.
And Chairman Heward, if I could just give my
Please.
2 cents in on this, I think having first seen this here, and the commission having first seen this revised application, which certainly appears to be done in the spirit of compromise and hearing the concerns of the neighbor, that being the case, I would rather have planning and staff be able to come in and say, we've reviewed it, we have a full set of plans, this does not need this variant, or this does. Rather than, I think any motion would have a number of conditions that we would have to react to after the fact. And I don't mean to delay Mr. Passfair, because I do believe he came here with extending an olive branch and trying to do the right thing, and I don't want to delay him another month, but I think it'd be hard pressed for staff to approve the amended revised set of plans without really putting that time in it, since they were just submitted today. So whatever the thoughts are, and I don't know if the applicant would come back up and kind of give us an idea of what his time frame is, if this is necessary, that he wants you to go forward on the first set of plans, or wants you to consider, and staff consider, the second set of plans, because I'm not sure what's currently before you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I very much agree with that sentiment. I think it's great that the applicant can come in the room here and make some changes to appease the neighbors. What we don't know is whether somebody else will be upset about the new revised set of plans, right? So in the big scheme of things, I think I would entertain a motion to deny this current application and have him resubmit an application to the city for city staff to review that would allow them to go through all the bullet points, make sure that we're dotting all the i's, crossing all the t's, and move that application down the court.
Sounds like a reasonable motion.
I second.
Before a voice vote on the motion, if we were to deny the application this evening for purposes of resubmittal, the commission would need to provide findings as part of that motion for the denial, for why the existing plans that were considered for the site plan and the variances should be denied, and then that denial resolution would come back at the next meeting on consent.
Is there a more seamless way of getting where we want to go than a denial?
Well, I think, yeah, I think what David and Susanna mentioned as a possible option for the commission's consideration would be to continue the public hearing based on the new plans, and then the city would be empowered to redraft the materials without having to renotice the public hearing based on the new plans and potential for removal of one of the variances. So that remains an option. I think that the options Susanna and David laid out are all feasible, but to deny the current application, we would just need denial findings for why it doesn't meet those, why the submitted plans that were agendized don't meet those entitlement requirements.
And can I add a clarification really quick? I think it's helpful if you look at the different entitlements separately. So, you know, if he does have to come back with revised plans, if you don't, you know, if you have an issue with the height, you'd have to put some kind of finding on the site plan saying we want to see some changes in the massing or something like that. If you have an issue with the front setback variance, I would make a motion to deny that variance so he would know to build outside of that front setback with any revised plans. If you had an issue with the floor area ratio variance, I would make those findings so that he knew that that was the issue for those revised plans. Just be clear about what part of the project are you not comfortable moving forward with at this time.
Okay.
Can we do that with a
And-
continuation instead of a motion?
But right now, we have a motion and a second that's on the table.
Can we read
But I do think it's
back?
important to see, I'm going to look for a nod of the head of the applicant. Do you want a decision today, or do you want, are you willing to go, since it's, do you want a decision today, or are you willing to provide the more formal drawings at a later hearing?
I can do that. That seems to be the most seamless, so that we don't have to completely start over. So I'd rather update the plans with all the correct information so that we take all these questions off the table,
Okay.
and then we can resume the discussion next month.
Okay, thank you. And part of my discussion of your motion, I like the idea of just postponing the whole, or continuing the whole thing and not really give a judgment. Even though that's a good recommendation, it seems to me we could modify
I agree.
this motion.
That's fine.
Do you want to withdraw the motion?
I
or-
will withdraw the motion, and I will make a new motion.
And do you accept the second? Do you accept that withdrawal? Okay, so the motion's been withdrawn, the second's agreed. Your new motion, it sounds like it might be to continue the public hearing?
Let's continue the public hearing, and let's have him readjust his, was it floor to lot area ratio and his side yard setback, which he's done in this alternative rendering, and have him submit a formal application to the city to make those adjustments.
Okay, so moved, second?
I'll second.
Okay, moved and second. Any discussion? Isaac, does that sound?
Yep, and just a quick question for the maker of the motion. Would that, does that motion continue the public hearing to the next regularly scheduled Planning Commission meeting in September?
Yes, sir.
Okay, understood. Thank you.
And that was understood by the person who made the second. Excellent. Continue the hearing. Wait, I guess we have to vote on it.
Chairman Hewitt,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Glass,
Yes.
Commissioner Say,
Yes.
Commissioner Kennedy,
Yes.
Commissioner Smith,
Yes.
Commissioner Putnam, Commissioner Furtick.
Yes.
Hearing continued. Public hearing number 2, please. Right?
You guys are gonna drive me to drink.
Okay, item number 2 is for transient rental license and coastal development permit for 328 Descanso Avenue. The owner applicant is not present, but the property manager, she is here, and property manager Johnny Mondero.
The owner is here.
The property is located in the high-density residential area and contains 3 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms. It's developed with a residential use consent consistent with the general plan and is allowed under the 2021 growth policy. The property is a duplex, and the upper unit will be used for a family vacation home. The property manager for the unit is listed as Johnny Mondero, and he is the 24-hour contact information, and his information is in the staff report. The subject property and all surrounding properties are developed with single and multi-residential units. The requested transient rental license does not involve any physical changes to the existing residence that would adversely affect or materially detrimental to adjacent uses, buildings, and structures. The saturation map attached in the staff report indicates that oversaturation will not occur. The proposed project is categorically exempt under section 15305 of the state CEQA guidelines for minor alterations in land use which do not result in changes in land use or density. The project does not require, the project does require coastal development permit under section 9-8.102B2V of the Avalon Municipal Code. And the project is not within the 300-foot appealable zone. City staff have received comments in opposition of the transient rental, and it's in your list of opposition letters. And basically, it's in concern of another transient rental versus a long-term yearly rental. And staff recommends finding the project categorically exempt under section 15305 of the state CEQA guidelines. Adopt the findings necessary as outlined in the staff report to support approval of the coastal development permit, including the project is not within the 300-foot appealable zone. And find the applicant is allowed under the 2021 annual growth policy of 2022. Are there any questions?
Questions for staff before we open the public hearing?
I have a conflict. I have property within 500 feet. For that reason, I will be abstaining.
Thank you,
Okay,
Mr. Furtag.
thank you. Thanks, Commissioner. Yeah, if you can exit the dais.
Yeah.
You mean what I'm doing right now, continue doing it?
Understood. Yeah, I think for best practices moving forward, if we can do disclosures at the start of the item, that is preferable.
Any questions for staff? See none? We'll open the public hearing.
My name is Kelly Smith. We've owned the property at 328 Descanso since 2013. We have used it as a full-time rental upstairs and kept it as our family home downstairs. We have for many years let people use the home and are very, very courteous of our neighbors, making sure that anybody that we do use the home is very cautious of how they respond to our neighbors, noise guidelines. The same type of people that we've allowed to use the home would be the same type of people that we would allow to rent the home. With that being said, with us being able to have this rental, it would just in turn make the city money because we would claim the taxes and be able to pay and obviously charge the tenants that we're now letting them use it for free. So we have had a home on the island with my parents since the mid-90s, since I think 1984. My parents ran and operated 211 Clarissa as a rental for both upstairs and downstairs without ever any complaints throughout their entire time that we owned that home as well. I think most of you guys are very familiar with Johnny Mondero. With him being the property manager, he would make sure that any issues were handled immediately and fully enforced. If tenants were, for some reason, disorderly, they would be removed right away, and we would make sure that we do everything to withstand the integrity of the community. So,
Thank you.
absolutely, thank you.
Anybody else? Seeing none? Close the hearing. Technical questions or a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the applicant with the finding that it's exempt from CEQA, adopt the findings necessary to support the coastal development permit, adopt the findings necessary to approve the transient rental license, and find the application is allowed under our 2022 growth policy.
Is there a second?
Can I just ask a question?
Me too.
to clarify?
Yeah, I want to clarify something.
Sure.
Okay, so when you stated,
down to- no.
so, because I'm confused, so when she said she let people use it, so it wasn't, they weren't,
She said she let them use it without charge.
oh, okay. And so it's like the same people that are gonna, okay, so there's been no,
Yeah.
okay.
Thanks for not asking. But that's a
No,
good,
I mean,
simple
because the
clar-
way it sounded, it was, I wasn't sure, because you said you're gonna let the same people use it, so, but pay, so I'm not sure, so.
Did you have a
We
clarification?
have a motion pending, so.
Yeah, we've
Okay.
got a motion
So
without
I
a
just-
second.
I just had to clarify it, because,
Can I ask my question?
Yes.
It depends.
I
Please.
just want to clarify, a transient rental license, do we need to put a caveat, they don't get a car, or is it the flats, it's already in there?
it's in there.
That's a excellent staff question.
They don't get a cart? Cart doesn't come with it.
Well, you could make it a condition.
That's why I'm asking.
There's no golf cart.
Okay.
Okay. So no one seconded. I would say that first motion is dead. Would you like
I'll
to
modify-
remake it?
I will make the same motion and add that a golf cart is not going to be permitted with this transient rental application.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Okay, so it's moved in second. Any discussion? No further discussion, no clarification. Please call for a vote, please.
Thank you. Chairman Hewitt.
Yes.
Vice Chairman Glass. Yes. Commissioner Say.
Yes.
Commissioner Kennedy.
Yes.
Commissioner Smith.
Yes.
Commissioner Putnam.
Yes.
And Commissioner Fertig has abstained.
Okay, motion carried. Thank you. Item number 3, and the public hearings, please. For a public hearing and a site plan.
All right, so item number 3 of the public hearing is a application for consideration of a site plan and conditional use permit, as well as a coastal development permit to authorize the operation of a beer garden that falls under the restaurants, bar, and cafe classification within the commercial C zone located on Front Street at 301 Crescent Avenue. The project is within the coastal zone and is subject to a coastal development permit, which requires a public hearing and planning commission approval. They will also need to determine whether the project is within the 300-foot appealable seaward area boundary and adopt the relevant findings to exempt it from CEQA under section 15303, new construction or conversion of small structures. The owner applicant is Santa Catalina Island Company. They're applying for the conditional use permit for the use, the coastal development permit for the development, and the site plan for the arrangement. The location is at 301 Crescent. As I mentioned, this is in the commercial zone. The proposal includes a mainly temporary or seasonal beer garden on the corner of Metropole and Crescent, situated almost halfway between the Wrigley Fountain and the Via Casino Roundabout, along Front Street, directly adjacent to the Metropole Marketplace. The site, an irregularly shaped quadrilateral parcel measuring approximately 6,650 square feet, is located on Avalon's main visitor-serving pedestrian corridor running along the bay. It's surrounded by a mix of other commercial uses, including retail, food and beverage, lodging, financial, postal service, and entertainment. Although the lot is currently vacant, it was operated as a vehicle rental business in most recent years, with a small 120 square foot commercial structure fronting Crescent. The remaining portion of the parcel is largely undeveloped outside of trash storage, mostly flat and paved throughout with minimal landscaping. A more detailed project description includes an operational season, roughly from April to October, with proposed hours of 12 p.m. to 10 p.m. at the very latest. Their occupancy provides seating for 120 people. Maximum occupancy is to be determined. The amenities that they're looking to include are beer and liquor, food, which only includes light snacks. No kitchen is involved in this application, but they do propose to allow local restaurant delivery services that people could, order up menus at the site. Mostly unfixed, temporary, light entertainment, including cornhole, beer pong, and other similar games. Portable restrooms, fire pits, projected imagery on the nearest vacant face of the U.S. Bank. This was amended. It was originally going to be a mural. And then a shipping container or other temporary type of storage that is going to be screened in an unspecified way. The application materials did not include any kind of analysis of the vehicular or parking impacts, and they do not propose to install any kind of parking as a part of this project, as they expect the main mode of access to be pedestrian foot traffic. The main entrance is at an existing location on Metropole, close to its intersection with Crescent. And they're proposing a secondary exit near the alley towards the back of the parcel. The existing trash containers that are on the site do not have a relocation plan at this time, but they do propose to install new individual trash containers throughout the site and a new dumpster for this particular operation in the southwest corner. They have existing electric, gas, and sewer, and we've confirmed with Edison that they are in the process of transferring some existing water allocation credits and combining that with the historical on-site usage. Most of the detailed findings are included in the staff report. And I'd be more than willing to answer any questions that anybody has on the specifics. But staff is recommending that the applicant come back with more detailed plans in order to ensure compliance with the annual growth policy, the site plan findings, and the coastal development permit. So at this meeting, to clarify, we'd like the commission to consider approval of the conditional use permit, which would authorize just the operation of a beer garden. And then when detailed plans are formulated, bring it back as a subject of that, as a condition of that approval, to ensure that all the site plan findings can be met with that detailed proposal.
Can we ask questions?
Yeah, questions for staff, please.
I have a couple questions. So if we're gonna issue this conditional use permit for the beer garden, and they won't be able to open and operate it until they come back and they suffice all the components to open up?
Yeah, so as part of the site plan requirements in the municipal code, site plans required for anything that isn't considered a minor renovation. And one of the things that disqualifies something as a minor renovation and makes it a major renovation is the necessity of any other kind of permit required by the commission. So the fact that it requires a conditional use permit makes it necessary that the commission also issue a site plan.
Okay.
So until a site plan is authorized, the conditional use permit would be inactive.
So I have a couple questions on top of that. So, I'd like to, I know we're only doing the conditional use permit for the beer garden, but, I'm asking these questions so when they do come back, that hopefully they'll have answers to. Will they need the notice for an ABC license or anything like that? Like to get, or is that they have to?
I believe you can comment on that in the approval of the conditional use permit. They would, at this time, they're only proposing beer and wine, and they would definitely have to be licensed with ABC.
Okay. And the food that
Yeah, the applicant says liquor.
you still would require a license for beer and wine.
Page
Yeah,
3.
beer and wine.
Well, he can present it, but on page 3, it says beverages, beer, and liquor.
Which would require a license.
I think any of them.
Oh, okay.
Exactly.
Right.
All of them do.
Please excuse me misspeaking. Liquor is included in this application. They plan to include hard seltzers and stuff like that.
So is that going to be a new license, or are they going to be, I don't know how ABC, like, I know some can like use the ones that they have on different bars. They could use a certain amount of times at a different location. So I'm just wondering if this is gonna be a new license, or,
Okay.
We don't know.
I'm not 100% sure how ABC regulates and issues licenses and everything like that. We're not really the lead regulatory
We're not going to take
agency
testimony
on-
into the public hearing, so.
okay.
on liquor consumption.
All right, and so that's all I wanted to ask, and I wanted to ask about the make sure, the clarifying where the transfer's coming from and all that of
we
the
just-
water.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
So, as part of our regulatory powers, we just make sure that they are in compliance with other agencies' requirements and everything like that. So, part of the condition would obviously be to
Make sure all of those
get all
things.
the permitting by ABC and everything like that, even though we're
Will that be
not
coming
100%
back
sure.
to us after, say we approve this new use? Say we approve the conditional use for the beer garden. Will they be coming back to the commission with the site plan, or?
correct.
Okay, okay.
I guess a question I had too, we've got portable restrooms in here. We're not talking about porta potties, because I don't wanna walk down the street and smell porta potties. I mean, it says there's sewer on the lot. I would assume whatever portable, toilets they would have would be hooked to the sewer in some way, so that the neighborhood doesn't suffer the,
Okay, so the question is, are they proposing portable?
it says portable.
So I agree that this is probably outside of the scope of the conditional use permit discussion, but it's definitely relevant for the site plan discussion.
Okay.
And conceptually, they are proposing portable restrooms that are shown on the very last page of the staff report in attachment A.
And Vice Chairman Glass, just to let you know, we've already discussed this in-house, and our intent is to have that conversation with the applicant to have those tied into the sewer.
Okay.
Can I just make a comment then? If they're tying into the sewer, and there was some talk about in the future then going with gas, with other things, and interestingly enough, on the application, it does mention they're not in a floodplain, but they're in an underground from the ocean floodplain. That whole lot had basements. And after the fire, I don't know how well, if it was just covered up or, if it was compacted. I was here then, but I don't remember that part of it. But, if they start digging into that, you don't know what's under the ground. It's not virgin ground.
Like I mentioned earlier, most of the structures, they don't have a long-term business plan right now. It's meant to be more of a temporary.
Use of the land while.
Yeah, so there are no permanent structures proposed. They would still have to go through standard, electrical, utility inspections and everything like that. And any permanent installation would probably necessitate planning commission approval again.
Comment?
No, I have a
Or questions, I'm sorry.
I have a question. It's about how we proceed here. So during the public portion of the hearing, if the applicant is up there talking about their application, we cannot ask them questions then.
Correct.
We have to hold them back once we've closed the public hearing, and then you would have to, what, reopen them? How does this work?
I thought we could always get.
We shouldn't, no, I mean, they should provide us the information, and then with the facts we have, we make findings.
We can't ask them
So
questions.
we don't ever talk to applicants under any circumstances?
They present, and so we have to be really clear what the requirements are. We can postpone it and ask, I mean, we can do basically what we did the last time.
And I think we can ask Isaac for clarification, but there's a difference between an applicant and then just somebody that comes to the podium to speak. I mean, if you have questions of the applicant to what they submitted to clarify their submittal, I think that's vastly different than a neighbor, so to speak, who is for the public hearing.
Even one with Tim Canby's background, okay,
Right.
now I've got the distinction, okay.
Thank you.
I
Thank
agree
you.
with David's point that the applicant who submitted the information, the commission can ask questions of the applicant, but the commission, under the Brown Act, can't engage in a substantive back and forth with other members of the public that are appearing in their personal capacity.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Actually, I have one. When I read through this application, it seemed like, well, it wasn't a beer garden. It's, it's liquor sales, no kitchen. I've never been to a beer garden like this before. I've been to temporary events, so it was confusing to me. So I'm not really sure what we have. So was this just sort of a force fit to make it fit? But it looks like something you might do for a weekend, and that would be it. I mean, a beer garden, I'm thinking of all the beer gardens I've been to, and I tried to do a little research on it. Yeah, and I've never heard of this. So either the application is really missing a bunch of components, or if they want like a place they can use temporarily on every other weekend, or do you know what their intent is?
So I wanted to clarify a little bit about the use. We obviously don't have the term beer garden in our municipal code. So the issuance of this conditional use permit would authorize any kind of restaurant, bar, or cafe. So when they come back, the only thing that you've authorized is that they can engage in any kind of activity that would fall under that umbrella. So it's not limited to any specific type
Okay, so just,
of those things. But I do believe that, I don't want to speak on behalf of the applicant for their intention with that sort of classification and what their long-term goals are for the space. And I think it'd be nice to hear from them.
So, can I ask one question? So
Please.
why are don't you think we should have the full scope prior and everything before?
Cart before the horse.
Yeah, knowing why we're,
So, was there anything else in that question? I didn't mean to.
I think,
it's hard
I
to,
understand.
it's hard
It
to
almost
approve
sounds like a
something when
zone
we're not
change.
sure what's gonna be there.
Right.
So the intent of bringing the conditional use before you guys, before they went into any detailed plans, was for them to be able to get the go-ahead to develop more detailed plans.
Okay.
If you guys were completely against this type of use, the conditional use permit is kind of
Then
the
they
umbrella
wouldn't, okay.
entitlement, and then you would get more
What's
specific
the point?
after
Yeah,
that
okay, I
approval.
see.
So, if you guys decided to authorize, an eatery and open public service area at this location, then they would continue with their plans and refine exactly what their proposal
Right.
is for the site plan.
and I think what's odd about this one is it's not like anything here where they're only serving alcohol and not providing food. And even, so as a land use,
It said light snacks.
right, but that's unlike, that's outside of Right, it's not a restaurant, bar, tavern, well, maybe a tavern, you know, maybe like jails. But
Unfortunately, our municipal code is not the
what I'm
most
hoping
detailed
is, yeah,
document.
right, it's not a beer garden, it's very unusual, and it's hard for me to kind of think of how it fits into a conditional use permit.
So a conditional use permit,
No, I mean, I understand what they're asking for, but I don't see how this fits, so hopefully that'll come clear.
into the restaurant, bar, cafe category?
Right, because it's neither of those,
Right, and what use is it? It's changing use, but what's,
based on this.
yeah, but what's the use?
So it's, if you just want to run one generally, that actually makes sense if they just said it's a restaurant, bar, or cafe. But what they've applied for isn't any of those things.
Okay, so if I can clarify a little bit, each zone has principally permitted uses which don't require any kind of extra levels of review. In commercial areas, you know, retail stores, those kind of things, you could just apply for a business license and open up. And then they have a second level of conditionally allowed uses. So if they had applied to open a trinket store or something like that, this application would not have come to you and we would have signed off on the business license. But because the list of conditionally approved uses, conditionally permitted uses in the commercial zone, they have, you know, a set number of uses that are considered, that need a second level of review. So any kind of operation that doesn't fit into the principally allowed or the conditionally allowed would not be authorized at all. So if somebody comes to us and brings us a proposal and it doesn't classify under any of the permitted uses, then they would have to apply for a conditional use permit for some of the second uses. And then if there's nothing at all that it falls into, if the code just doesn't consider it, we would probably have to amend the zoning code if somebody had a super, you know, oddball proposal.
Okay.
So would
Or
this?
a zone change if there were other zones where that would be allowed.
So would this particular use require health department?
I believe so, yes.
Okay.
Any other questions? I'll open the hearing for anybody wish to provide information.
Hello, I'm Jeff Stevens, Newport Beach, California, on behalf of the applicant. First of all, I want to thank your staff for, I agree with everything you said. It was very clear. Thank you for that. We are simply seeking a conditional use permit for the commercial zone, and this use would fall under restaurant, bar, and cafe. So the reason we don't have a detailed site plan at this point in time is we want to make sure that the conditional use permit would be allowed for such a use at the site. And obviously then we have to come back with a very detailed plan for site plan review. So at this point, as was very well said, we're strictly looking for a conditional use permit for the beer garden. So to clarify a couple of things, the intent is that it would be basically Easter through, let's say, Oktoberfest. And the idea is that we would use mostly, I'll say kind of, let's say, temporary facilities, like I think it was mentioned, the mobile restroom, for example. We're looking to do a high-end porta potty that would connect to the sewer, but all these kinds of things, you know, will be in the detailed site plan. We're pretty confident with the way the site plan is now, but it's not detailed. It's not ready for site plan review. I think one of the other questions, yes, we will be going through health department. No, we're not using any other alcohol licenses from any other facility. There will be an alcohol license specific for this facility. So there will be health department, ABC, and site plan review. So at this point, we're just looking for the conditional use permit for the use at the site. I think I answered the main questions I heard, but I'm here to answer any other questions on, you know, I understand that it is very kind of unique. One last thing. So the reason we're doing kind of, let's say, kind of temporary facilities, if you will, is to see how it works, to make sure, you know, it's successful. And then going forward, obviously, if we were to make any significant changes to the site, we'd be coming back for permanent structures. I think we all hope that's the case. And I will also say Commendations to your staff again for identifying one thing we did not identify in here, and that is they identified that we had not really identified issues related to the transport of food being brought to the site. So we have no intent or desire for any food to be delivered by vehicle. We obviously have Antonio's across the street. That was kind of our first thing that, hey, we spoke with Antonio's, the operators, which is also the airline company, and said, look, we want to do this beer garden, but we don't want to build a full kitchen, and but we want to have food available. And I've been to an establishment that operates this way. It operates pretty good. You have like plasticized menus, if you will, on all the picnic benches, so when people come to the beer garden, they know that there's, restaurant A, B, and C will deliver to the site, and we don't want any vehicular delivery. We want foot delivery only. That's part of the beauty of this part of town, is it's very pedestrian accessible. So if there's any question about delivery being vehicle, we are not supportive of that, and that's I guess will be one item we could discuss. But I just want to express our intent because it was not in the application. So I'm here along with Jason Chung, VP of Facilities Design and Development, also from the Allen Company, to answer any questions you may have.
Mr. Chairman, I have a couple questions.
Sure.
Okay. The portable restrooms, assuming that you got the CUP and the site plan approval, would you be expecting to remove them at the end of the season?
That's a good question that we'll probably address in the site plan review. That part of the project, so far, our plan would be to bring in a trailer and plug that into this, connect that to the sewer system. And whether that was removed at the end of the season or not, I think it would probably stay, but I think that's something that we would certainly specify in our site plan application, because that's something we haven't dove too deep into yet, but we do plan to have a portable restroom that could be removed, but also will be hooked up to the sewer system.
Okay. The main entrance would be at the existing location on Metropole, close to Crescent. We've had a problem forever with the little doghouse in the front of the car rentals, because all of the queuing was right there on the sidewalk and it drifted all over the place. So are you going to, will your plans address that problem?
I wasn't aware of that problem, but actually we kind of imagined if we are very successful that could be an issue. So currently on the site there's 3 access points. One is from Crescent, and then there's 2 on Metropole. The 2 on Metropole are sliding gates. The ones on Crescent are kind of, let's say, swinging opening type gates. So our plan for this application is to have 2 points of access that I've discussed with fire department. One would be the sliding gate on Metropole closest to Crescent, so the front would not be used. We're actually using the second sliding gate in the back for delivery, which would obviously not be during business hours, but also as an emergency egress. So the front access would be closed, basically. The first sliding gate on Metropole would be the primary access, but that would turn into more of a swinging gate that somebody could stand by and monitor, not the full width. The other point of access at the back, which would be the second sliding gate on Metropole, would be egress only and loading. So the idea about could there be a line on Crescent of patrons waiting to get in, and I think we hope the answer is yes, and our approach, and again, this would probably be something we would address more closely in the site plan submittal, would be to have like a beeper or something. So, because we don't want queuing it's a public sidewalk, there's a wall right there, so we understand we don't want that sidewalk impeded. So what we would do, if there were overflow, people that wanted to come in, we would say, here's your beeper, when it goes off, feel free to come back. Something like that to manage the issue of queuing, because we don't want queuing on a public street or sidewalk.
Okay. Will it be for adults only?
No, absolutely not. This will be not a liquor. I know liquor was mentioned, but we right now we're planning beer, wine, hard seltzer. So it's intended to be a family, open to minors, not for consumption, obviously. We do have an ABC consultant that has kind of advised us on what permit to get to allow that, to allow, beer to be served, but also allow minors to be on. And again, our food service will be brought in from offsite. Did I answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Can I ask one question? I noticed on this application that you hadn't really, because you haven't done the site plan, it's not complete, but the trash cans, there hasn't been. I will hope that possibly that could be a focus point. I mean, because I walked by the property today, and on the sidewalk, on the city sidewalk, it is just grease and from people dragging trash cans to the trash cans that are on the lot. And you said you're keeping those dumpsters there. So if we can try and mitigate something to make sure that there's a storage area for the dumpsters, or a different access point, or how you can transfer the garbage from like the Blue Water and Antonio's that go into those dumpsters in that lot. If you walk down the sidewalk from their property to the dumpsters, it's full of grime, oil, food stains, and it's pretty bad. So if you're planning on having like a food beer garden, I think the trash is a huge problem, and that's not very inviting when you're walking. Because I know when I walk from the bank to the post office, I walk on the street now because it's so bad on the sidewalk. So maybe you can.
I'll certainly bring that up. I hadn't noticed that, so maybe that's in
Yeah.
recent. But yeah, that
was
we would
really
not
bad today
want
when
that.
I walked by. Yeah.
It sounds to me like the issue is probably those dumpsters are really old. I think those are still left over from the cart function being there, so they're probably leaking when they're being.
No, they're dumpsters that were just recently put on there not too long. Well, not that long ago. They weren't there for the carts, and I think the restaurants, the Blue Water and the Antonio's, are using those as their dumpster for their restaurants. So
Yeah.
what they're doing is dragging their
Oh.
trash cans to the dumpsters, but
Oh.
in the process, they're dripping gross stuff on the ground, and it's sticking and it's staining, and it's not.
Yeah, I will take that up. I'm glad you clarified. I thought
Yeah.
it was from the dumpster being
No,
hauled
no, no,
off-site,
no,
but you're talking it's from the
no.
trash to the dumpster. Yeah, we will, take that
You'll
up.
want to address it anyways if you're going to have people there
Yes.
eating and enjoying,
No, thank you
that
for that.
area.
We'll look into that, and I'll mention it to the, our team at Antonio's.
Thank you.
I had one other question. The secondary exit in the alley's so tight as it is right now?
No, the alley is actually a solid wall, and we don't plan any access to the alley. There's 3 points, currently, there's 3 points of access. There's the Crescent entrance, and then 2 sliding gates on Metropole. And we're going to be basically just using access and egress on Metropole only. No alley, no Front Street. Yeah.
Just know how tight it is in there. You have cars and people.
Yeah, I think it's a solid wall. We just want to use the existing access points, which are currently 2 rolling gates, but both would be converted to, or the front one rather would be converted, well, they both would be actually, I'm sorry, converted to a combination rolling gate and swinging type door that somebody could easily monitor the comings and goings.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Excuse me. Anybody wish to speak for or against? Close the public hearing. Any discussion before a motion, or any ideas?
I have discussion. I appreciate the fact that the applicant would like to get some sort of feedback from us, but I just question approving a conditional use permit without knowing what conditions should be attached to the conditional use permit, like how the dumpster is secured, and what happens to the porta potty, and everything else. I mean, the applicant answered some of my questions. I think it's fine for us to give them feedback on the general sort of idea of a beer garden, which for me, I am generally in favor of a beer garden as opposed to a vacant lot, depending on what they do with the vacant lot, which we would know from the site plan. So, yeah, I mean, I'm happy to give them a wink and a nod, but I'm not real pleased about giving them a CUP ahead of plans.
Yeah, I know what you're saying, because in a way I have that same feeling. A conditional use permit, I feel obligated that we need to define the use. So for me, I'm thinking one is, so this could be part of a motion, would be
Can I clarify
that,
before we make any motions?
yeah, but I'm gonna finish. One would be that if there's structures look temporary or intended to be temporary, then the conditional use permit is temporary. That way it won't be granted, and then 10 years later, we're still looking at the same thing. The other thing would be, I think now's the time, if we think beer and wine in a beer garden sounds great, good, but does that include a kitchen? Everything else, I think normally when we think of a conditional use restaurant, cafe, or whatever, a brewery, you would require a kitchen in that. It's more than just a place to drink beer. So if that's what we would want. And so, but basically as part of the conditional use permit, we can add conditions, but it's difficult to when we don't have conditions. I mean, with anything really to look at. So I agree with you on that.
I agree.
Comments?
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Okay. Yeah, and your
Did anybody else want to add on to that before I?
We'll probably
address
add
some of
on
the
to it when you're done.
concerns?
So.
So I pulled up the section of the code for commercial. So if somebody wanted to come in and apply for anything that would fall under these umbrellas, we would require a conditional use permit. So this proposal, the closest fit that we had to put was restaurant, bar, and cafe. That's pretty loosely defined in our code. So the issuance of a conditional use permit, that was the only thing that we thought that we could prepare findings to recommend approval. And that is only authorizing the use. The conditional use permit doesn't require, doesn't mention development standards, nothing that you would review in a site plan, which is why we didn't make any findings for the site plan. And because that is still required, you would be able to comment on and condition that as part of the site plan review, similarly to the project that you continued. Even if he's not going for the variances, you still have the discretionary power to condition that approval and comment on it.
But now the site plan, though.
With the site plan.
The site plan, we can't condition uses, though. Let's say, I think the kitchen is the most
Not the use. The
obvious.
kitchen would be a structure, though, because kitchen
Right, it
still
would be a
follows-
structure, but if
Kitchen is
if
within
that
that
was
use
seen as
of
a condition that we would want, and we didn't add it now, we wouldn't be able to add it during the site plan.
I do not think that that is correct. I think you could include that in the site plan findings.
Okay, and I guess, yeah, it's still a little awkward in that.
I do understand that
Yeah.
the mix-up is a little.
No, I mean,
bit,
I totally get it. I understand conditional
they're
use
not
permits, and I
standard.
understand zoning, but usually yeah.
So in order to approve
I'm not
the
sure this
conditional-
meets the definition of a bar or a cafe. In fact, I'd say it doesn't meet the definition of a restaurant, bar, or cafe.
So basically,
it's
the code can't,
right.
it
I
can't
remember
account
what.
for every single business proposal within the classifications that it has. So whatever staff receives an application, we have to decide what category it best falls into. If it's not authorized at all, we would have to amend the code, or if it's authorized somewhere else, just not in that zone, they would go for a rezone. But staff thought it was appropriate with the definition that we have for restaurant, bars, and cafes. It's pretty broadly defined, that was the best category for this to go into.
And
So if we don't think that that's appropriate, we could outright deny the CUP application.
Right, and I'm also thinking that an outdoor version of a restaurant, bar, or cafe is a great idea. You know what I mean? It's not, anyway, I like the idea that it's open, and to me, that's not relevant for a restaurant, bar, or cafe. But
Again, I think
it sounds
we're-
like food delivery and all that. Yeah, but I also understand where you're going. Okay.
Yeah,
Anybody
I
else?
think we're tying together too the uses and the development of the site a little bit closer than kind of how I imagine the approval process to go. The use is just authorizing the fact that they're going to sell food and alcohol.
So.
Well, they're not
But
selling
they're not
food.
selling food, so to me, that would be a bar,
But
right?
That's in the same category.
when we talk
Yeah.
about food, they are selling some food. They're not making it there, but they are
No,
selling
they're- I think-
snacks and that.
Oh, okay, so,
I'm just saying that the issuance of this permit would issue any kind of restaurant, bar, cafe, or anything that we think would fall under that
Okay.
category. Any kind of structural improvements or something that would have to meet development standards would be part of the site plan review. And that's the findings that reference the exact,
okay.
Development of the land has to follow everything in the zoning code, the design, all of that kind of stuff. But for the CUP, the findings, I'd like to just go over the findings too, since it
Thank
sounds
you.
like there's a little bit of confusion. So just to clarify, we didn't make any findings for the growth policy. We didn't make any findings for the site plan. We were able to make some findings for the coastal development permit, but not enough to take action on it. And then for the CUP, we were able to make all 5 findings, which is why we brought it today. So the first one that you have to, the first finding that you have to confirm before you can issue this is that the use conforms and carries out the certified land use plan for the area. The land use plan is part of the general plan. So there is a big section in the general plan about how we want to develop commercially designated areas. And then we have a couple, excerpts from that, analyzing, our compliance of this use with the overall general commercial vision of the city. The second finding is the nature, condition, and development of adjacent uses, buildings, and structures shall be considered, and no proposed conditional use shall be permitted where such use will adversely affect or be materially detrimental to said adjacent uses, buildings, and structures. So you guys would have to make the finding that site specifically, this is an appropriate use in comparison to the neighboring sites. The third one is the site for a proposed conditional use shall be adequate in size and shape to accommodate the yards, walls, fences, parking and loading facilities, landscaping, and other development features prescribed in this chapter or as required as a condition in order to integrate said use with the uses in the neighborhood. So the as a condition was kind of what we were going for in this one. As a condition of the conditional use permit, we already are recommending that you put site plan approval as an added condition since we're not outright approving it today. And if you want, you can get more detailed in that condition and add in, the specific things that you guys want to see on the site plan submittal, or we can just bring it back when they submit detailed plans, or however you want to do it. But I'll go over the recommendations too before we get there. Number 4 is the site on which the conditional use is located is served by a street that is adequate in width and improved as necessary to carry the kind and quantity of traffic. I think you could also make this finding based on the proposal. I wanted to note staff the zoning code doesn't require any kind of parking for this type of use. And you have a pretty good idea of what the vehicle impacts are gonna be already based on, you know, the proposal. So staff is actually recommending that the commission add a condition that the applicant do a traffic study, a pedestrian traffic study for that corner. And there is some reasoning in there about how that would better ensure compliance with the general plan. But that is just a recommendation and an option, and it doesn't have to be part of the conditional use permit approval. And the last finding that you guys would have to make to be able to issue this would, the proposed conditional use shall be consistent with and carry out the purpose and the intent of the underlying zone. Then we have just the definition of the C zone and what that intent is and why we think it, you know, is compatible. Like I said, the issuance of the CUP doesn't really get into the individual development characteristics of the proposal. It's mostly looking at its compliance with the general plan. Yeah, those 5 specific things. And we thought that that was enough to take action on this proposal. But if you guys aren't comfortable with making those findings, we can continue that even too. But in summary, we're recommending that we adopt the findings to support approval of the conditional use permit with the added conditions of the deferral of the separate entitlements and the pedestrian traffic study. And then find the project categorically exempt from environmental review.
Does everybody feel a little more comfortable that you have a little more say in what's going on when you hit the site plan? Or that-
Anybody want to make a motion?
I would move for continuing this to next month's regular meeting, pending actual site plan that we can look at and adequately determine whether or not a CUP is necessary or should be granted.
Is there a second to that idea?
Apparently not.
I'll second it.
Just further discussion. None of it sounds like a bad idea to me. I mean, it sounds like it could well be an improvement over a vacant lot. So I'm not opposed to it, but I would like to see what the real plan is before granting the conditional use permit.
I agree.
Thus the motion.
Okay. Any other comments on the motion?
Well, and my guess is, and staff tell me if I'm wrong, the whole reason it's here now is they wanted to feel the waters, right? So I think if everybody's kind of in agreement that it's kind of an intriguing idea and let's move the ball down the court, which is, I think, what I'm hearing. I think that gives the island company the understanding that it's worth investing some time and money and effort into drafting those plans and ideas and bringing them back to us.
Zach,
is that an accurate assessment?
I think that's fair.
I believe so, but I.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a motion and a second.
Any further discussion on the motion?
No.
Chairman Hewitt?
Yes?
Vice Chairman Glass?
Yes.
Commissioner Say?
Yes.
Commissioner Kennedy?
Yes.
Commissioner Smith?
Yes.
Commissioner Putnam?
Yes.
Commissioner Fertig?
Yes.
Okay, and to clarify
Was this
that.
to the next regularly
Correct.
scheduled
As-
meeting?
Yeah, that I think is implied
Okay.
when we make those motions.
And that was stated.
They're now stated, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now we are on to.
Anybody want to take a break or just hold on through?
Plow
I
through.
think we just have one more item, right? to clarify.
Let's get her
Okay.
done.
Wait, we have two.
Oh, you got two.
We have two.
Okay.
Is it anybody? We're okay, we can decide after the next
All
one.
right, my eyeballs aren't floating yet.
Okay. Staff report, please.
All right, this staff report was prepared by Birdsea Planning Group, but I'm going to be presenting it for item number 4 of the public hearing. The applications for a site plan review, conditional use permit, coastal development permit, and 2 variances to construct a new 2-story triplex on a vacant lot located at 236 Catalina Avenue. The proposed structure is comprised of 2 stories. Unit 1 would be 2 stories with 736 square feet on the ground floor and 758 square feet on the second floor. A 215 square foot porch would also be constructed for Unit 1 on the northwest side facing Catalina Avenue. Unit 2 would be 654 square feet and located on the ground floor. Unit 3 would be 709 square feet and located on the second floor. Unit 1 access would face Catalina Avenue. The Units 2 and 3 access doors would face northwest towards Beacon Street. Unit 3 would be accessed via stairs constructed exterior to the rear of the building. The building height would be 27 feet and 9 inches. The total lot size is 2,200 square feet, and the total area covered would be 1,720 square feet, which equates to 78% of the lot. The subject property is zoned special commercial. Residential, single-family, multifamily dwellings are a conditionally allowed use in this zone, which is the nexus of the conditional use permit application. Residences that are authorized by a conditional use permit are subject to high-density residential development standards. Just to clarify, these are the general high-density residential standards of development and not the quote-unquote area to designated zone or the flats. And the last entitlement, it also requires a coastal development permit, and the last entitlement would be a site plan review. The variances are for less than a 3-foot setback on the side yard and a parking exemption for all 3 spaces. To clarify, originally when this application was submitted, there were 2 yard variances requested for both the side and the front. But the applicant did revise the submittal materials so that the front variance was no longer required, in case there's any misconceptions in the staff report or discrepancies. But the only variances are for the parking for all 3 spaces, and then the side yard setback, which I believe is going to 1 foot instead of 3.
Is that the side, are you referring
Which
to the,
side?
are you referring to the one that is backed up to the property?
The inner side, the landlocked side,
Okay,
not the corner.
Let's push it closer to ourselves.
yes.
The project is categorically exempt under section 15303B of state secret guidelines. The project is within the coastal zone and subject to a coastal development permit, which staff is recommending approval of based on the following findings in the staff report. Staff is also recommending approval of the staff has made the following findings for the site plan. Based on its compliance with development standards, which includes discussion surrounding the associated variance and conditional use permit applications. And then there's a detailed discussion on each of the variances and its compliance with the municipal code, as well as the conditional use permit authorizing the residential development of the special commercially zoned lot. So staff is recommending that the commission approve the conditional use permit allowing the construction of a 2-story, 3-unit multifamily residence in the special commercial zone. Approve the coastal development permit, which is required due to the project's location in the coastal zone, and adopt the findings necessary to determine it outside of the 300 feet appealable area. Approve the site plan subject to variance approvals and/or modification requirements. Approve the setback variance authorizing a 1-foot side yard. Deny the parking variance and require a revised site plan submittal modification. Find the project categorically exempt under CEQA section 15303, new construction or conversion of small structures. And find the project allowable under the 2022 growth policy.
Thank you. Questions for staff?
I will be abstaining for the same reason as the previous one. I have property within 500 feet. However, there is no conceivable way that this particular development is going to impact my life one way or the other. And as an interested member of the community, I would like to sit out in the audience and make comments.
Commissioner, a couple rules of the road on that. So when you provide public comment, it has to be just solely on your personal interest. So you wouldn't be able to speak for anyone else in the neighborhood. It has to be solely based on how the project impacts your residents within proximity to the seat. And then outside of participating as a member of the public, to avoid an appearance of impropriety, you would ensure that you weren't visible to the commission as they deliberate. So you can speak as a member of the public, but it has to be based solely on your interests. You can't speak for other neighbors or larger considerations. And we just want to note for the record that you have, although you're sitting on the dais, you haven't yet participated in the item.
Okay, now, all that's understood, and I will be leaving the dais and going out into the audience. Is that correct?
Yes, I would say the best practice would be that you leave the dais, speak on your personal interest as a member of the public, and then the best practice would be to then go to a back room as opposed to be out in the public vicinity while the Planning Commission makes their decision.
Fine, thank you.
Thank you.
And just going forward, we want to ensure that we have disclosures at the start of the item when there's a potential FPPC conflict of interest.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay, somebody tell me what he said.
Right at the beginning.
Pardon me?
State if you have a conflict before we do the staff report.
I have no conflict.
No.
Well,
If you're going to excuse
exiting the
yourself,
dais-
we need to do it before
Yeah, I
we
think-
get started
Oh,
with
I
the
have a
project.
conflict, that's correct. I'm excusing myself.
Okay, so
Okay. I think the timing.
That's hard to hear, too.
Questions for staff before we
I
open here?
do have a question for staff. We got this letter from actually the neighbor prior to the right at the when we sat down, and I just he's the one that backs up against his property. It was his property, and the property is purchased from his family. So, can you clarify and answer maybe his question on record, because he is saying that the city had told him that there was no way to build more than 2 units on the lot at 2,200 square feet. And I think it's because is it special use or special commercial that you can. So can you clarify that? Because I just want to answer that question, Diane.
How can you do 3 units?
Yeah, that way there's no question.
Is this the comment
It's on the
from the email? at
third
AOL?
paragraph down, yeah.
Yeah, it's the third one down.
Okay.
Yeah, it's right here.
Okay, so I can't really speak as to what,
The
staff.
city, because you weren't here, but I just, that it is.
But the technical question.
That the technical question that you can build
I was getting there.
this, okay, thanks.
So I'm not sure if they use the density of the special commercial zone by mistake, or if they use the density of the high-density residential zone, or if they use the density of the high-density residential flat zones. So I'm not sure what exactly went into that and what number they arrived at. I can clarify that I used the density as allowed in the high-density residential zone. I also want to clarify that whenever there is they use acre for density measurements, which doesn't exactly apply to Avalon. So most of these projects have to be, converted, and they come out to decimals most of the time. So it's not a nice, easy number like, 40 units per acre, I think, is what's quoted in the municipal code. But I, as a best practice, round up whenever I'm doing that density calculation to, follow in line with the state's state of emergency over housing and all the density-related regulations that the state is pushing right now.
Okay.
And then people always have the option of doing a density bonus unit or an ADU or something like that. But I determined that they were allowed to get 3 units on this property with the zoning and the development standards that they have and the size of their lot.
Okay, thank you.
Questions for staff?
Did you want me to address the entire letter or just that
That.
specific? Okay.
I have a question. Condition number 3, approve the site plan subject to variance is in the staff recommendation. Recommendation number 3 on page 9.
Does it say, grant the side yard variance?
So is that the variance for the one mentioned below?
There's 2 variances, right?
Yeah, can you clarify that for me?
One is parking.
Yeah, so there's one variance for the parking, which they're proposing 0 parking at the moment, and with its development standards, it would require 3. And staff is recommending denial of that variance.
Okay. Okay, and that's why the slash or okay,
Yeah.
thank you. I get it.
I guess my question would be, why are we, looking at the 1-foot setback, and what was the thought behind that? That we accept that one, or that we?
Like I said, I didn't word for word prepare this report, but I'll do my best of communicating the general idea. And you mean just the setback variance, right?
Just the side yard setback variance, which is.
That's on the alley side, right? That's the back side where they want the one, no? She's shaking her
It's
head.
the
no.
side.
It's on the neighbor's side, the one that
Yes.
sold the property.
Well, so here it says southeast side, and if you look at these pictures, or what picture? It said southeast, and it's where the outside stairs are.
So we have the front, the rear, the street side, and then the side.
This says southeast on
We're
this,
just going for the side.
right here, so I'm confused. This must be wrong.
That should be the east side, not southeast, right?
There you go. Interior side, non-street side. So the findings for that, I can go through each individual one that's been prepared, but the general idea was that this falls in kind of a border property to the flats, and even though it's subject to the general standards of development for high-density residential, a lot of it has been developed as if it were subject to the high-density residential flats, which allow for a 1-foot setback. So there are a lot of places in the general vicinity that have built to that setback, and then even in this direct, immediate neighborhood that are not conforming, that just, assume that was, or were built before the codes were made like that. So we think, it maintains the character, it doesn't impose on the character of the neighborhood or anything. It doesn't give anybody, we don't consider it a special privilege, since it's shared by many of the surrounding property owners. It wouldn't be detrimental to the public welfare of the neighborhood or property, because it would be fire sprinklered, there wouldn't be a fire safety hazard, it'd be a 24-hour firewall. And it would not be contrary to the objectives of the local coastal program, because it's not located seaward of the nearest public highway. It doesn't interfere with or impede public access within that side setback. And it's consistent with the intended land use patterns within the community as part of, a fringe property of the flats in this very specific, pretty narrow border zoning classification of special commercial.
Thank you. Any other questions for staff before we open the hearing? Okay, open hearing.
I do have a question. So I see why they do not want to be required to create parking to maximize the living space. I do know that it's a small lot. However, is there something that we can do as the city to restrict them from having a vehicle that comes with the property? Like
approve the variance, but restrict the vehicle permits issued?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's definitely an option.
Is that an option?
Yeah.
I mean, if they want to maximize their square footage.
If someone rents one of them, a year-round resident rents one of them, they couldn't have a vehicle.
All new
That's a
construction
choice
requires
for-
parking.
Yeah, no, I understand.
And we do have an issue. I do appreciate building, housing for residents 150%. Or maybe restrict to one, or I'm not sure. I mean, we can discuss it, but we do need housing, that's for sure. But I'm also concerned about parking.
So as part of, you can condition each approval separately. So as part of the conditions of approval for the parking variance specifically, you could put, no golf cart registrations, no golf cart permits, no vehicle permits will be issued at this address. So then if they decide to move forward with the variance, that would apply. And then if for some reason the applicant disagrees with that solution, they could actually put the parking in, and that would not apply if the
Okay.
variance wasn't in effect.
I'm just throwing it around, some
And-
options.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but if you're saying you can't have a vehicle, then if you're an islander who's been here 6 months and you have a golf cart, you can't rent that ever, right, without coming
But
back.
people need
You
help.
can't say that, how
Okay.
can you say you can't if you're here 6 months, you don't have to own anything, but you get to have a golf cart.
But
But that goes with the
that
address.
goes with the address, so.
I understand, but I understand
But
that.
if I had a golf cart that went to, say, Sol Vista, and there's
Yeah.
only one address, but they have that bonus density,
Yeah,
I can't have a golf cart.
no, I know, but
So-
well, all
I
right.
mean-
Okay.
But if you have a golf cart and you
Right.
wanna move, it's like, oh my God, you gotta sell your golf cart? No, it's not the way, it doesn't go
Yeah.
along with the vehicle part of it.
Any other questions for staff?
I understand what you're saying.
I just wanted to clarify, you guys could either, it doesn't have to be set in stone.
Right.
If they decide to put in this parking, and negate the variance, then they could get vehicle permits.
Right.
Doesn't mean that they could never get vehicle permits for the history of.
Or they could be, it could be approved with just
Or
the,
that.
yeah.
Any
However
other-
you want to condition it.
Okay. Any other questions before we open the hearing? Before we get into discussion of the substance of it?
No.
Okay, I'm going to open the public
And
hearing.
And Chair and Commission, I just, as we open the public hearing and Commissioner Fertig prepares to speak as a member of the public, I know I said a couple parameters on that previously. I just want to follow up to say, when Commissioner Fertig comes up, he should identify himself solely based on his capacity as a resident and property owner. And so it's solely related to his personal interest and shouldn't be regarding his role as a planning commissioner, and shouldn't identify himself as such. And then once Commissioner Fertig has finished his public comments, he should exit the chambers, and I would recommend going to one of the rooms in the back so as to not influence the decision-making process after that time he provides public comment as a member of the public.
Thank you. So based on that, let's let Mr. Fertig speak first, if that's okay, because I think that'll meet. Sorry. Sorry, Mayor. Oh, Annie Marshall.
Well, good evening. I'm citizen Bruce Fertig, residing at 329 Catalina Avenue. And I would like to go back, first of all, to the density question. As special commercial, does it not adhere to the high density? Okay, that would be 40 units per acre. Okay, well, I did the math this afternoon, and for me, that came out to 2.02 units. Now, I don't know how that gets rounded to 3. It's barely an even 2.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yep, I was just going to note we can't answer questions.
Right, we're not
Okay,
answering.
so that's my
That's your
math.
comment.
I would question whether this is a legitimate application. As far as the variance for the parking goes, I don't, it is, if nothing else, it's a 2,200 square foot lot, which is a sizable flats lot. I don't think they should be given a variance for 3 parking places, and I don't think they should be given a variance to intrude up to within 1 foot of the property line on the next to the existing house on Catalina Street, directly adjacent. Those are my issues. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else?
And Marshall, 330 Descanso. And if perchance this comes before, in some kind of appeal before the city council, I will recuse myself because I'm within 500 feet. I'm glad you look at plans very, very seriously like you do. If there were 3 units there, and in the future, each of those units will have 3 trash cans. And well, not a question, I'm concerned that you're gonna need to put 9 trash cans out there and not to be put in the alley. They're not to be meant to be put on our alley, they're supposed to be on the property. That's all.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Well, you may remember, I was here last month too, but I didn't introduce myself. I'm Brian Tucker, and for purposes of these meetings, I'm going to be the new face of Fine Line Construction. I wish the old face was here. I really, really do. I mean, we all know and love Pete, and big shoes to fill there. But I know some of you don't. meet y'all soon. I'm gonna start this off that the client was not able to be here. He's got a big family and some of them have COVID at the minute. So he asked me to read a statement for him. So this is on behalf of Tyler and Jennifer Ramison. Thank you for your thoughtful review of our project. While our family is currently battling a COVID infection, we did want to give you some background on us and our project. Tyler began coming to Catalina as an infant almost 50 years ago. Now our family of 7 comes every year for several weeks in the summer and for many weekends throughout the year. We built and own a house on Eucalyptus Street, and we continue to grow to love the island more and more every year. In addition to our home on Eucalyptus Street, we own a few residential rental properties on the island and have witnessed firsthand the shortage of housing. This project is an effort to provide new additional housing that is badly needed on the island. While we understand that there are aesthetic requirements for setbacks on the island, we are also aware that these setbacks necessarily reduce the livable space for local residents. We hope that this trade-off will be thoughtfully considered in your deliberations. Again, thank you for your review of our project. We are very excited about it, and we think it will be a wonderful addition to Avalon. And I'm going to turn this over to Tori Jones, who designed all of this.
So since my name's Tori Jones, I'm at 2711 Oak Knoll in Los Alamitos, across the pond. Since we designed this, Tyler has spoken with the owner of the property next door. And he is willing to forego that 1-foot variance. And we are back to a 3-foot variance. What we would like, if possible, would be to get that variance on the alley side. And depending on which way you guys are going parking-wise, we also are willing to, well, not willing, but we would like to amend the variance for the parking and provide 2 parking spots versus the 3. Two of the units are gonna be full-time rentals. One of the unit, as of now, will be for their family, and they have a very extensive +7, like 30 family that come over to the island often. So they know what the island, the island means a lot to them. And so by providing the full-time rental units, the one will be not full-time. And then that way, if we can get the 2 parking spots, those 2 full-time rentals could then have a cart if they needed one. So other than that, one other thing that I know we're limited, because we're on the corner, we're trying to make this building aesthetically pleasing. We don't want it to be the fish house, no offense, that Pete first built when he first moved here. So the front of Catalina, we originally had the first floor porch out to about 1 foot from the property line, and that's what we brought back into the 3-foot setback. So I don't know if we can revise the site plan review to possibly incorporate like a 1.5 foot variance so that we could keep the building back and, you know, create some architectural relief and elevation change and not just have a big box on that corner. And I think if you don't have any other questions, that's where we're at.
Moving the variance from one side.
Moving the variance from the neighbor's side to back out.
But there's still no
That's
trash
the-
area.
Under the stairs.
That's the new version, removing the side yard setback and adding the parking.
Oh, and the stairs to unit 3 moved.
Right now we'd have, I mean, this was done fairly quickly. Right now, we're envisioning that the stairs would have to be more enclosed, so we wouldn't have the outdoor stairs on, which is actually nicer.
Well, how about a trash area? Where would that be?
The trash would be in, we have enough space in the auto let. Right now, I believe there is, 18.
What are you using for auto wet space? Go ahead.
6 by 10. So we have 6 wide, 10 deep on the property, or on the alley side. So we would incorporate the trash cans within, it would be like 6 by 14.
Yeah, there's, yeah.
Thank you. Close, anybody else? No? Close the public hearing?
I would change the sound to 2 parking spaces as opposed to no trash area, and alleviate the side setback, which would affect the neighbor most.
Anybody want to make a motion? A detailed motion?
I'd make a motion to approve with, you said 1 to 1.5 feet in the back?
Oh, in the back,
1 foot?
1 foot.
I would be much more likely, well, I'll make a motion to approve with a 1 foot setback in the back on the alley. The 2 parking spaces added. Trash to be incorporated into those parking spaces. And I guess the detail.
And then the conditions basically.
Conditions, with the exception of
4? That's
5. Is that correct?
Am I allowed to ask legal a question at this time?
to clarify. Yeah, it hasn't been seconded, so yeah.
Okay, Isaac, would we have
Yes,
to,
it's,
would we have to notice a new
go ahead,
variance?
Susanna.
Would we have to notice a new variance since it's going to the back side yard, the backyard instead of the side yard?
I think, well, it's difficult to hear the motion that was made, so if it's possible to repeat it into the microphone, then I think I'd be able to better assess.
So the applicant submitted a revised site plan that upholds the side setback, but kind of transfers the variance, I guess, to the back setback, and is proposing to encroach 2 feet into that setback instead. Can we do that, or do we need to notice a new variance application?
I don't think you need to notice a new variance, but you need to have the findings specific to that variance that encroaches in a different direction than what's in the staff report.
Okay. Clarification on the motion before it's second. Do you want to restrict the availability of autoettes? Because there's two places could have one, but then there's one space.
I think, no, I don't. In the interest of having more housing for the town, I would forgo the 1 parking spot and take the extra unit. So I don't
Okay,
want to
so
restrict.
that's not a part of your motion?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I also just clarify that the motion is still a motion for a variance for 1 park to
One
vary,
car.
you know, you're gonna,
I'm
so
sorry.
we're,
Yeah,
it's still a
so-
variance for 1 parking
But
space.
for 1 parking space.
Because
In
they're
your
required
motion-
3.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, absolutely. The
Okay,
variance would be
so-
for 1 parking.
So the 1 foot rear setback and 1 parking
1 foot,
space.
Yep, rear setback as well.
Okay, now the question
Okay,
is there a second?
All right.
Before we
Did
go.
you get that, Isaac?
It matter. Is there a second?
I second.
Okay. So Isaac, do you have questions?
Yes, I need a little bit of clarification on the record. So the recommendation and the motion maker is to approve the conditional use permit, coastal development permit findings, a 1 foot rear setback,
In the alley.
1 parking space setback.
Variance.
I'm sorry,
Variance.
1 parking space, so variance is correct. So I think to proceed on that motion, we need to ensure we have the findings for those entitlements. So that would be staff's recommendation on the CUP. I think staff's recommendation was that, and Susanna, correct me if I'm mistaken, that we needed findings on the CDP, and then we need to ensure that the 2 augmented variance findings meet the variance findings pursuant to code.
It looks like the CDP does have findings. It looks like the CUP does have findings. The site plan does have findings. So the only thing that does not have findings that we would have to make to approve would be the parking variance for 1 space. And I'm not sure,
Okay.
if you could correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm not sure if we could just use the findings for the variance authorizing the 1 foot side yard and apply them towards the rear yard variance.
So there can be discussion as the commission. We have a motion and a second on the floor. In order to vote on that motion, the commission would need to ensure that there was some findings for why they could approve a 1 space parking variance based on those findings in the code. That to do otherwise would result in unnecessary hardship, that there are exceptional circumstances, that it won't be detrimental to the public welfare, and that it won't be contrary to the local coastal program.
Okay, so currently the findings that are made under the setback variance do not look specific to an interior side yard.
Yeah, and I
So
think.
they could utilize those for
Right, and I
the
think the
rear yard.
proposed finding is that the weight of additional unit overrode and was in the public interest as opposed to an additional spot.
Are you
Not that I
directing me
agreed
to
with
include that in
but
the resolution?
yeah.
Okay. Could you repeat that finding for the record?
Yeah, the weight of having an additional unit overrode the 1 space for an additional golf cart. I think that was your intent when you said we need more housing downtown.
Housing trumps parking.
Okay, for the parking variance.
Not that I
Were there
agree
any
with that, but
additional
that's what I
findings for
heard.
the setback variance then, before we close that one out? The setback variance, we're just gonna apply to the rear? There were
Right.
no additional? Okay, and then for the parking, we're gonna have to make all of the findings.
Correct.
Right.
Right now.
Based on
Well, because we recommend.
housing over parking.
And
That's
the
a
reality
priority.
is that the unit that's gonna be used by friends and family won't need a cart in the first place. In fact, they won't be able to qualify for a cart because they're not island residents.
I think it's
But
addressed.
this
And it would
property.
require off-street parking
Right.
anyway.
It would if they're not here full-time.
Right.
Okay, so I think we still have to make the 4 specific findings required, since staff was
So
not
what I-
recommending approval previously.
Okay, in finding 1?
The strict application of the zoning ordinance will result in unnecessary hardship as follows.
Yes, we'll lose a housing unit that's needed for the city.
There are exceptional circumstances that apply to development of said property which do not apply to other property in the neighborhood.
A lot of houses don't have parking there.
But they're all older.
Right, but that, I'm not even saying I'm gonna vote for this, but
I know.
that's what I heard. But if it passes,
Isn't it exceptional circumstance
Oh
that
my
they-
gosh.
it's for the other family that they already probably have a cart with the other house?
no, that's,
It's new and we're-
it can be sold and,
It could be sold, yeah.
Oh,
okay, number 3?
well, did we do that one?
Did we do number 2? Exceptional.
I think we did, yeah, it's common in the neighborhood.
Okay.
It's not a special circumstance, was that it?
No, we're saying
It's,
there are exceptional circumstances that apply to this property which do not apply to other property.
it's a rare property that we can get 3 units out of. I know, I still don't know.
And you're gonna vote no?
Well, I-
Do you guys support that finding to be significant enough?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I think Susanna, I think it's being handled in the correct way. The commission's deliberating, so they're making
Yeah.
proposed findings, and then the maker of the motion and the second can let staff know whether they concur with those findings. And I would just note for the record, what we would do is after the motion is held, so whether it's approved or denied, if there's a motion that varies from staff's recommendation, we would bring the resolution back on consent to ensure it encapsulates the deliberations that are occurring.
Okay, so we're right on track.
Right.
All right, number 3, the granting of this variance will not be detrimental to the public welfare or neighborhood property because.
It promotes the public welfare by providing an additional unit.
Eric's on a roll.
Yeah.
And
Uno mas.
the last finding is granting of this variance will not be contrary to the objectives of the local coastal program as adopted because.
It doesn't limit access to the water. In fact, promotes it. Bingo. So is that your motion?
Exactly what I was thinking. I just couldn't express it more.
So discussion on the motions?
And just a couple points of clarification, I know this is a long process. So I just want to be clear, the first on the motion and the second of the motion are in concurrence with those findings associated with the parking variance for one space to make those variance findings. And separately, that part of the motion is to otherwise approve staff's recommendations on the other entitlements. And for the setback variance, it's the same findings listed within staff's approval or recommendation of approval, but applicable to a 1-foot setback from the alley.
Absolutely, Isaac.
On the
And the
second,
second?
yes. Yes, second.
They both concur.
Did you hear me?
Okay. Discussion on the
Yes.
motion before us.
I totally get and understand your motion, Bart. And the reality is we're awarding good behavior, which is providing housing to the citizens of Avalon, right? I get it. Aren't we doing the same thing when we just say, hey, we're going to approve this and we're just going to give you 2 vehicle permits for your year-round housing units only? We're doing the same thing doing that. And I think it sends a better message to the public that we're trying to encourage people to build housing, that we'll give up some parking spots, we'll play the give and gets, right? Without creating a loophole for the next guy that might own this property.
I don't have a problem. I agree.
So I would recommend that we modify your motion.
And add that
You can only have you can have 2 vehicles on this triplex. And the people that get the vehicles on this triplex are solely for year-round housing.
Okay, so is that an acceptable amendment to the motion by both?
It is acceptable.
Yes.
Acceptable?
So we're denying the 1 variance.
No, the variance is granted, however.
Variance is granted, but it's granted a different direction. We're only gonna issue 2 vehicle permits for the triplex, period.
Okay.
So we're adding a
And the 2
condition
vehicles are
to
only
the
gonna go
variance.
to those that occupy those units on a year-round basis.
Okay.
You can keep that straight.
And that way, if it turns into a CUP later, and then there's a discussion, hey,
Right.
my grandma's moving into it, and she really needs a cart, and hey, Vaughn's is directly across the street, it ends all of that.
I think that makes sense.
Okay,
So the motion remains the same, but Commissioner Kennedy would like to add a condition to the parking variance that only 2 vehicle permits be issued at this location to long-term residents.
So it's
Correct.
basically
Correct.
just what I said, you're
And-
restricting that one property to like a restriction. Okay.
and the person making the motion and the
And
second
the reality is, I think
agreed.
it's done a
So-
better job for parking, because once they do the curb cuts, you're only really gonna lose 1 full-size
Yeah.
spot on the entrance into the parking spot anyway.
Yeah,
Wait.
but these are off the
It is
alley.
on the
But they're off the alley, so it's
Wait.
even
So
better.
there's no
I think
curb
that's a
cuts.
great addition to it.
But they're creating 2 parking.
Yeah, I know, I'm
Oh.
just playing.
Okay.
Okay, so we have a motion, an amended motion that's been amended by both the motion maker and the second before us. Any more discussion on the new motion? Okay, seeing none, call for a vote.
Chairman Hewitt.
Yes.
Vice Chairman Glass.
Yes.
Commissioner Say.
Yes.
Commissioner Kennedy.
Build it.
Commissioner Smith.
Yes.
Commissioner Putnam.
Yes.
And Commissioner Fertig abstain.
Yeah, thank you. Motion carried.
Or recused.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brian.
You are a patient man. One more.
Final item, please, or next item, please.
All right, the final item, number 5 of the public hearing, is a general plan amendment revising the recently adopted 2021-2019 planning cycle housing element update and recommending adoption of those changes to City Council via resolution. In compliance with CEQA guidelines section 15164, an addendum to the general plan FEIR has been prepared, which concludes that the proposed updates to the general plan housing element do not result in any new or greater environmental impacts that were previously analyzed, disclosed, and mitigated. So some background, you guys already certified our housing element. It was adopted by the City Council. State requires that it be adopted before they review it. So we sent the adopted version to the Department of Housing and Community Development, or HCD. That's in charge of reviewing housing elements. They had minor comments, to which we made minor revisions to the element. And in addition to that, just accepted more public comment, as it was also required that we post it for public review after we make those revisions. And that document, along with the amendments needed to the CEQA document, the FEIR for the general plan, is what's before you today for adoption. We have the red line version that's been on the website for quite some time, as well as physical copies of both the housing element revisions and the FEIR addendum.
I'm assuming this is a public hearing?
Yes.
Okay.
We have received no comments for this item.
And any questions for staff before we open the public hearing? Seeing none, open the hearing. Anyone wish to testify? No one's in the audience. I'm going to close the hearing. Any discussion or motion? Motion? Did anybody want to make a motion based on staff recommendations 1 and 2?
Can I clarify? I think
Please.
these recommendations were from the original application. So could we
Could you
get the
outline a motion that
could we get the direction from the commission that staff prepare a resolution recommending that the city council adopt general plan amendment 2201?
So moved. Is there a second? Second. Moved and second. Discussion?
For consent at the next meeting.
Just want to add on to Susanna's motion, which I think works, that the recommendation to the council would also include their approval of the addendum to the CEQA document as well. Is that all right with the motion maker?
I'm sorry, I missed that.
We couldn't hear you, Isaac.
I'm sorry, I missed that, Isaac.
So that would include the addendum to the FEIR, the environmental filing as well.
Wonderful, yes. And to the second? Yes. Okay, any discussion?
Push along the smoke and mirrors.
Call for a vote?
Chairman Hewitt.
Yes.
Vice Chairman Glass.
Yes.
Commissioner Say.
Yes.
Commissioner Kennedy.
Uh-huh.
Commissioner Smith.
Yes.
Commissioner Putnam.
Yes.
Commissioner Fertig.
Yes.
Any reports from Isaac, the attorney or planning director or city manager? Anybody want to jump in this late and have a long discussion?
Nothing further
Seeing
for you,
none?
no.
Commissioner business?
I have commissioner business. All right, I've been having discussions with Susanna about having the development standard pages as being a standard operating procedure for us, and my most recent conversation, she said she's figured out Amanda's secret, which is to have the applicant fill them out. So I think we have a workaround for the staff. I would like to see the development standards filled out for every site plan for a new one or anyone that adds additional square footage. And that's, I don't know that that's a recommendation to the staff, how we proceed. We don't need a.
Yeah, we can't discuss
We
it.
don't need a hearing or anything on that, correct?
Correct.
Okay, that's what I'd like.
Thank you. Anybody else has something new? Seeing none? No business from the audience, since we're all alone now? We're adjourned. Good night, Tony.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.